Hi, everyone. Dominic here with Smart Catholics Mastermind. Glad to be with you and excited to have a discussion with Dr. Peter Malinoski. Welcome, Dr. Peter. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be here, Dominic, and with your audience as well.
Fantastic. So, for those who are just watching Mastermind for the first time, it is a live series to meet the minds and hearts of creators, leaders, hosts in our community. They devote their time and talent to mastering their vocation so that you can live a fuller life faster. So, Dr. Peter, can you share with us a little bit about your ministry? I think it's called Souls and Hearts.
Souls and Hearts. Yep, Souls and Hearts at soulsandhearts.com. We are all about bringing the best of psychology and human formation resources grounded in a Catholic anthropology, a Catholic worldview to men and women throughout the world, throughout the English-speaking Catholic world. And so
Fantastic.
to that end, we have podcasts, we have courses, we have communities, we have blogs, we have all kinds of resources that are really meant for you to be able to take advantage of. We're trying to really bring, like I said, the best of psychology, the best of human formation to you. And so that's what we're all about. That's what we're passionate about.
It's that we're like-minded on this. There's such a massive need for this. We were just talking off air before jumping on how I strongly believe every Catholic needs to learn to ride a bike, read the catechism, and have healthy mental health, uh, practices. So being able to bring this to people, valuable and important. So let's take a step back,
Mhm.
and I'd like to hear, or if you wouldn't mind, let's share a story with the audience, a story about your origins. Who was there a moment where you began to realize this is where you needed to be going with your life?
So back in 1999, I was finishing my Ph.D. in clinical psychology. I was at a crossroads in my life, and I was really struggling with how do you ground psychology, psychotherapy, counseling in a Catholic anthropology? Because what I thought was, if we don't do that, if what I'm doing isn't helping Catholics along the road to salvation, at best, it's a waste of time, right? And I really wanted to harmonize what I was learning psychologically with the truths, the perennial truths of the Catholic faith. And I had a secular education. There wasn't any, really Catholic doctoral programs at the
Mhm.
time. So I was considering getting out of psychology altogether. I was frustrated. I could fall back on being an applied statistician because I had training there as well. I thought about going into behavioral medicine, using psychological techniques to help people cope with physical ailments, but a voice kept saying, there is a way. There is a way. Seek it. So I trusted that voice and I went deep into my prayer life, really got in touch with Carmelite spirituality, the works of St. Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross,
Beautiful.
and also phenomenology. Dietrich von Hildebrand's Transformation in Christ, huge impact on me. And I also had supervision from a Protestant psychoanalyst. And that really started to help me along these roads. So by bringing these things together, I found a way to practice therapy that was both Catholic and effective. Right. So
Mhm.
fast forward 20 years. All right. Now what I'm called to do, now what I really am passionate about is getting out of the consulting office, getting out of the realm of psychotherapy and counseling. I'm still almost full time with that. But what I wanted to do is bring it to the internet, bring these resources that I'd spent 20 years compiling. How can
Mhm.
we bring the best of those in a way that's not therapy, but helps to educate people, helps to bring people together that want to do this together under the broader concept of human formation, right? So now not so much psychotherapy, which is more reparative. It's more
Mhm.
about, kind of, you know, uh, restructuring the person's internal experience and world. Now we're
Mhm.
going to help people grow, right? So that's what Souls and Hearts is all about. We really wanted to find these helpful ways of helping people to connect inwardly with their own selves, helping them to become more integrated, helping them to be better able to tolerate the pain of being loved by God, being loved by their fellow man, and also being loved by themselves. That,
Mhm.
that being loved is really a hard thing for us because while authentic love is given freely, it's never received freely. It comes and it burns away things that are disordered, that are imperfect. There's things that we have to give up if we're going to take love in, whether that be from God or from another person or from ourselves. And so what we're all about is removing the psychological impediments to tolerating being loved and to loving, and loving God and our neighbor, the two great commandments. And because grace perfects nature, right? That's St. Thomas Aquinas. Grace perfects nature. It doesn't destroy it. Grace needs nature to work with. And what's happened is because of the fall in the Garden of Eden, and because of the sins of others, our own personal sins, there has been devastating effects on our psyches that have huge impacts on our spiritual lives. And so what we're about is, and the reason why St. John the Baptist is our patron, is that Souls and Hearts is all about preparing the way for the Lord. It's all about preparing you on the natural level for the spiritual life, which is where I think so many of the problems now lie. So
That, I mean, when I first found your website and you shared that line, it's like this light bulb went off. It's like, that line encapsulates perfectly the need for mental health and for Catholics to be working in that space. I have so many questions, but we don't have time for all that. Could you actually go back to the one little point where you said the pain of being loved, and you started to touch on that? Could you expand on that? Because it's such a unusual turn of phrase.
So many people have bought into what I call the sort of Hallmark card movie, or the Hallmark movie model of being loved, where love is painless, love is just easy, love is natural, it just sort of spontaneously arises, and it's just so wonderful. But because of the effects of original sin, sins of others, and our own personal sins, to take love in actually costs us. Anything in us that is not only sinful, but even disordered or dysfunctional is going to be purified by that love. It can't coexist. Anything dysfunctional, anything disordered can't coexist with that love. And so there is, and these are sometimes things that have helped us get through the day. These are coping mechanisms that have helped us survive. There are things that, we've built whole elaborate structures on, these coping mechanisms, these defenses, these ways of interacting. And so to give them up, there's a cost to that. And we have to pay the price before we have the benefits, right? So a lot of the work in human formation is about what on a psychological level, what on a natural level is really keeping me from being open and receptive to that love, be it from God, be it from my neighbor, or be it from even myself. I think so many people struggle so much with ordered self-love. And the reason I'm really advocating all of this is that if we don't do this work in this life, anything that's disordered in us or dysfunctional in us is going to have to be purified in purgatory. There's going to be a process later. And I'm not an expert on, the theology of purgatory, but everything I've heard is that it's better to do it now than later, So.
This is what I see this as the one of the many thrusts of the Second Vatican Council is we have to stop putting off these end of life issues, heaven, hell, judgment, and so on. We have to stop thinking of them as end of life issues,
Right.
But kind of move that bar all the way back to birth. How do we start living that life now and allow all of that to permeate our natural, supernatural, our spiritual lives at every point in every day, and build a culture around that? And I think we're still catching up to what that means, and it's certainly not an easy discussion to kind of revisit all of this. So along these lines, the next question I want to ask you is, one of the terms that we use a lot in the Smart Catholics community is being a first responder. And it's a bit of a funny one from the medical space, but the idea is this: if the church ministers to us, Christians and Catholics, we're then called to minister to the world. So if the church is like a field hospital, then we can consider ourselves as first responders, the frontier to reach everybody else and be their first point of contact to meeting Christ. So I'm curious, how are you doing that yourself? Maybe what insights do you have on that? How would you describe or articulate that in your own words
Well, we have a lot of free resources out there. We have 3 free video courses. One is A Catholic's Guide to Choosing a Therapist. Another one is A Catholic's Guide to Helping a Loved One in Distress. And the third is A Catholic's Guide to Self-Help. So those are just free resources that we have out there. We also have podcasts. I do the Interior Integration for Catholics podcast, which is all about really practical work that you can do to help with your interior integration, which I think is the number one hallmark of mental health. But the other thing that's really exciting, Dominic, is that we also help equip other first responders. So in other words, we really want people that are in ministry to know that you can go to soulsandhearts.com, and it's a one-stop shop for all kinds of topics that are psychological and Catholic, that are about human formation, that natural level, and grounded in the Catholic Church. And we're also not polemical. We're not interested in, addressing political issues or, conflicts in the church and that sort of stuff. It's about our interior formation and, preparing the way for the Lord within us in terms of resolving these things. So we're first responders. You can find us on the internet. People get to us by these organic searches and so forth. But the other thing that we're really about is connecting the best clinicians, the best Catholic clinicians, in the field of mental health, and giving them a forum, a sandbox to do their thing, so that their expertise can get out and to be known by so many other people. So there's that linking function that's also really similar to what you're doing with Smart Catholics. So
fantastic. That's fun. And I was looking at your YouTube channel. I mean, just from that alone, there's a ton of video content on there, which is phenomenal. And then you have, was it 2 podcasts or just the one?
We have 2. We have Interior Integration for Catholics. That's the podcast that I do weekly. It's about 40 to 50 minutes long. And it's all about how do we integrate our emotions, our thoughts, our desires? How do we integrate our memories? How do we become more whole inside? Jerry Crete does a podcast called Be With the Word, and that's a psychological take on the Sunday Mass readings. So it's a really understanding, like, how do we dive into the psychological aspects of the readings for the Sunday Mass? And so we're really multimodal. We've got blogs, podcasts, video courses, we've got interviews, we've got all kinds of things going on at Souls and Hearts. And we've also got a table of contents where you can come in and actually look by category. So if you're interested in what we have on scrupulosity, boom, you can go right there and see all the resources that we have on that, or any other major topic.
You've also got a course you're just launching too, is that right?
We are big into community. And so the Resilient Catholics community is a community of lay Catholics that I lead that are all about this human formation work. And so what we do in the Resilient Catholics community are like literally exercises. We have companions in there that's going to be coming in, where you check in with your companion every day. We've got our companies that meet weekly. This is for people that are willing to spend about 2.5 to 3 hours a week specifically focusing on their human formation. That's really what this is about, because so many people are crying out and they're realizing, hey, my problems with relating to God the Father are because I had a terrible relationship with my earthly father, and so much of that is being brought in. Or the problems I'm having with authority, with God's authority, are because of my authority issues I've had with authorities that I did not experience as benevolent. Or, my problems in prayer with Jesus Christ in his humanity are because of the way that I was sexually abused by a man, and I don't trust men, and I can't relate anymore with men in the way that I could before the trauma, right? So there's all kinds of things that on the natural realm get in the way of the spiritual life. So what we're doing is that fundamental foundational work so that the spiritual edifice can be built on a solid foundation. That's really what it's about. And there are people that recognize it's a niche thing. I'll tell you, I think this is really small right now. It's a really niche thing, but we think it's so critical because I see so often people's spiritual problems really being in the natural realm. They would much rather have a spiritual problem, a dark night of the soul, than they would a human formation issue or a psychological difficulty.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. No, I remember there's Father Fortea, a Spanish exorcist, and he was like, you need to calm down about demonic activity in your life. He said about 70% of what you go through is just you yourself. Okay, so calm down. but that same it slipped my mind. Anyhow, so okay, this is the community that you're running. It's helping people to do that, integrate, work on the again,
Yeah,
the grace before
it's the
the
only
nature before the
program I
grace.
know of. It's the only program I know of that's specifically for lay Catholics
Mhm.
in human formation. There's been a lot of attention on human formation in seminaries, but it
Mhm.
hasn't really spread a lot out there. There's a few ministries that do focus more on that. But there's a lot of information about that at soulsandhearts.com/RCC. We've got a whole landing page describes a lot more about that. And registration's open only in June and December. You can only join that community in June or December because we spend most of our time working with the members, and we're not constantly bringing in new
Sure.
people. So there's a structure to that.
Good. No, that sounds great. And actually, I remembered one of the funny things that my wife and I are both, constantly watching and reading up on, things like mental health and so on, and inner child and,
Hmm.
stuff like that. And the thing that I just find most hilarious is so many of our opinions, we love our opinions. We're extremely attached. I mean, it makes sense, we should be. But what I find hilarious is when you go and you start doing inner work, self-evaluation, your opinions start to change. And so, I used to sort of think of myself, I call it how I see it. I say it how it is. I say the truth, 5 years later, maybe a little bit of inner work. It's like, ooh, I wasn't speaking out of truth necessarily, but I had a very strong bias, So that's why this kind of thing is, it's so important, and why I'm so dedicated to helping to promote this. So, Dr. Peter, if in about 60 seconds in 1 minute, if you had 1 minute to share a message with the world, what would you say?
Right. So my thing is, do your human formation work. Shore up your natural foundation so that grace can perfect you, right? Grace is going to need that natural foundation. And so I recommend that people have not only a spiritual plan of life, but a human formation plan where you're actually working on integrating your emotional life, your relational life, your thinking, your body, being in touch with your body, all of this in the natural realm. And so to do that, I'm going to recommend that you get some support, somebody that you're talking to about that. It doesn't have to be therapy. I'm so fascinated with what you can do outside of therapy. So if you listen to Interior Integration for Catholics, that's my podcast, and it's like you really resonate with that, come and join. There's scores of people that are now coming together on this huge pilgrimage towards human formation. We'd love to have people on board for that. But whatever means you use, don't neglect the human formation. Don't neglect that natural level. There are so many people that are trying to build their spiritual buildings in the air, really on unstable foundations. So that's the big message that I would bring to people in 60 seconds or less.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, Christ became man. He didn't just show up as an angel being. So
Exactly. 30 years of human formation. Remember Luke 2:52. And Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Jesus grew. He had to develop on that human level
there's a
in his
discussion
humanity.
I would
In his
love to
humanity.
sink my teeth into, because that's just that. Okay, that's fast. We gotta wrap up now. So thank you, Dr. Peter, for joining us. For those who have who'd like to learn more about him, please have a look in the show notes. They're probably accompanying this video. So if you did enjoy this video, please share it with your one friend that you think would also enjoy it, and come and regroup with us in the free Catholic community on SmartCatholics.com. We're free of trolls and ads and toxicity. We're faithful to the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and the Church, and we are committed to a culture of kindness and learning. Does that sound like you? Come on and join us. Thanks again, Dr. Peter. It was wonderful to spend time with you.
It's been a pleasure, Dominic. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
God bless. Have a wonderful rest of your